Youth and youth, greetings. All I way aspire to make it to Premier League or make it to greatness. Or see the greatness and want to make it. You want I say something to you now. As you get out there in I feel people try approaching you with all kind of things. And things them when them approaching you, they want half on all money. They not half on the money for try win on the games. They try half on the money for no sell on a team, on a dash for a game. See? I try half on the money for no sell out on a team, on a club, make no clubs lose. And if you don't believe me, you have this guy what him call named Moses, him been to all, him get a lock-up feet already. Him was one key player back in some 10, 15 years ago. Him do a podcast where I tell you the kind of association, big wigs, some international crews were involved in recruiting and getting these people for sell them clubs, match fix, spot fix, all of them little things there. So if them can do it with players, them can do it with referees. So some of the time when I see some countries or some people of some country force the coaches play certain players instead of ones where would have liked for win, or some player where feel certain type of pressure and would have want the revenge or something. Those players don't get a chance for go. Them pick the players where just glad for you take part. Some players where no see no bet much better future, so they will take the bribe and sell them team. Anyway, people, listen to part of the youth podcast and go check it out for yourself. Otherwise, listen.
Risk one conversation with a referee, a coach, or anyone outside the players will bring everything down.
Corruption does exist within the world of referees.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. But I think what we need to remember is scope and location. Even at the lower tiers, there's still a good governance for officials, which allows fans and people watching those games to know that the referees and coaches have not been compromised. What you'll find in match fixing, it usually comes from experience with someone that's trusted. The gambling culture in sport is rife. So if I'm 30 years old, for example, and I see that young player coming into the team and I'm playing blackjack in the back of the coach, I'm going to be like, hey, come and play a game. Then that young player is seeing us bet £1,000 and he may get approached if he gets released. And they may turn around and say, okay, well, you don't have to do anything. Just go and get me a player's name. That's £500. Or if the syndicate needs other players to book hotels or for them to go undetected, I can give you £1,000 for booking the Hilton Hotel. Football's a relationship-based business, so your character is very key. Because if you, for example, turn around and said to me at the time, Moses is match fixing, but I'm your captain, then the psychological effects, almost in a very highly toxic, egotistical way, is you're almost killing people softly without realizing that a lot of this money and system, again, come back to one thing: who's influential and what type of relationships you have. At that time at Bromley, I was very close with the manager. The manager, in and around New Year's, told me I wasn't getting paid because I was having my daughter.
No, people, you hear what I'm saying right there, son? That's why sometimes you wonder our club have some good player upon it and then can't win match. them little thing now people have to start looking to. Some little thing where, how the hell that just happened there, so? Some of them think they have one day if I get them get paid. Now listen, not going, continue to listen.
So then he gave me the fire to justify everything I've done, to say, you know what, I made the right decision. Then when you're speaking to other players and they haven't been paid, the conversation's easier. Hey, look what the gaffer said to me. If he thinks that about me, and more importantly, I haven't got a contract that's really worth anything apart from the paper it's been printed on, how can you tell me to miss my midwife appointment because we've got a game on a Saturday? And I can almost use this as an advertising tool to every single player that I speak to. Look how managers are treating us. Because it's all a form of manipulation, and more importantly, that manipulation can pinpoint anybody. Could you imagine if players were injured? You know, could you imagine if you owed somebody money? Could you imagine if your captain said, hey, speak to me, what's your problem? To Moses, you know what? I want to get a wedding ring. I want to propose. Take $5,000. Pay me back whenever you want. Because all you need to do is ask one person a favor. You know what? On 20 minutes, I just need you to concede. Why, Moses? I don't need to tell you why, just do it. If you go and do that, I'll give you $10,000. Why would he say no?
Money.
I'll say if we start at the top, the Premier League's a better governed, the payments are astronomical, like any other sporting league or federation. As you go down, you're less paid. I was playing, I believe, at step 5 or 6 at the time, so it was a level below the conference. I was probably on £800 to £1,000 in cash in the Premier League. It's watched by millions. The level that I'm playing at's watched by a couple of hundred people, if that. So, first of all, you start off by taking pocket money. And whilst you're sitting there with them, you're almost giving them the inside scoop of, okay, well, this is how this manager plays. At this point, if this team has a successful FA Cup run, you'll know it on league, they usually have a worse season. So behind the scenes, managers and clubs that have good FA Cup runs, lower level, get paid, and they don't really worry about the season because they've secured funding for the following couple of seasons. So when you're speaking and sitting down and going back and forward with these, you almost formulate a plan, and part of that plan, you need players. If you have 5 players, it's great. If you have a few players, it's even better, because do you have a few players on your team, or could you balance it out 3 and 3 or 1 and 1 or 2 and 2? If you have 1 player for team A and 1 player for team B, that's even better than having 5 players, because these 2 players, all they need to do is create spot fixing elements where you concede in the first half, you concede in the second half.
Was there a point where any of your friends or family were just like, kind of, see, you've got a bit more money now, like what's going on, and did you have to lie to them?
To be honest, it's a great question, because they only found out until I'd done the podcast. So I was on a BBC podcast called Confessions of a Match Fixer that came out in August of 2024. We'd done a listening for the podcast. That was the first time my family found out. The only person that half knew was my brother, but not to the extent. So again, that journey was the hardest thing I've had to do, because I've had to go back and revisit people I ain't seen for 15 years. So their version of Moses was Moses that plays football. So 15 plus years later, hearing that, the room was silent. My mum didn't know. My sister didn't know.
Didn't know the extent.
They didn't know anything.
Sometimes I can just see the match fixing them blatant.
We are part of this almost chessboard. So for example, I used to play centre back. If I play left or right side centre back, I can be hugely influential throughout the whole team.
If I was watching a match, for example, how would I be able to spot that it was fixed?
I don't think you would. The only way you could potentially spot it, I'll give an example. We could watch an international game or a Premier League match. The defender slips and a goal goes in. It's match fixing. Because when someone does something that isn't really of the normal, you're going to be like, this match was fixed, or like, it's just human nature. Even before I was match fixing, I was like, that looks odd. Why would he go and do that? Well, then again, when you're on the pitch, mistakes happen. And this is why it's so sophisticated, because you can never really tell. What data can do is detect, and with different technologies, help you understand it. I'll give you an example. If you look at a football pitch, depending on the pattern of play, the style of play, the positioning, you'll be able to tell if you're an experienced defender, or why are you marking the wrong channel or the wrong side in this specific moment. Or if you're an experienced striker, how have you angled your body at this moment and taken that shot and it's just gone a yard off the post? Or if you're a midfielder, why are you not as mobile as what you are? Because if you look at that and you compare it to the market and the bets that are placed on that game, any line or movement on an illegal market will kind of help you understand, oh, was that game fixed? But how many fans do that? If that makes sense. When you watch a game, you don't watch a game to think it's fixed. You watch a game because you love the sport and more importantly, it's fair. And it's an equal playing field. And that's why betting markets exist. So the Chinese syndicate, they had a system. And on that system,
one bookmaker now.
the amounts being placed on that market, and there was a delay. So, for example, if they had a market open in Asia, they could put on a delay in live time because at that time, obviously data and analytics weren't what it was. All of our matches were being transmitted and recorded. One of the mules sat in the crowd. Every fix that was agreed, we'll put our hands up or make an acknowledgement. He's recording the game with a headset and he's telling the market or he's telling the principal exactly what's happening. So whilst the market's moving and bets are being placed and where they are, more people are putting on markets because that can be the only game that's fixed on that market at that time. So imagine knowing A, the outcome's going to happen and B, what the scores are going to be. So that little line movement from my understanding at that time was what made them considerable amounts of money. So towards the end of my fixing career, if you want to call it that, I had two options. Do I go and expand this into Europe and the UK? Do I become my own bookmaker? I had the cash and the liquidity. I could now understand enough about how to get illegal bets on to make margins. But then off the back of doing that, I also had a daughter on the way. And the last one was fixed that we done. Whilst I retired from football, I was caught between a rock and a hard place because I knew where the money was, and more importantly, I had access to that money before I was actually arrested. And I didn't realise, I was probably depressed at the time, without realising what that looks like. I left Bromley, I was at Whitehawk for a few weeks and Sutton for probably like a month or two. And funny enough, when I went to Sutton, I felt that feeling and buzz again, but then I was like, I don't think I can play here without match fixing. I don't have that same hunger or desire. Let me leave. I've left, contemplate retirement. Michael's rang me because he was at Whitehawk. Going back and forth with the manager, and he was like, yeah, we want to offer you £350. But we didn't realise I was already a millionaire by then. So it wasn't about the money. So as I'm being pulled back, something's telling me, expand this business. But let's not make any excuses here. It's very simple. It's greed. You know, the more of something you get, you want more. Because ultimately, you have to remember, whilst I'm going through this, nobody knows. I'm not speaking to friends. I'm not speaking to family. I'm not speaking to my girlfriend. Then I got roped back in again. So I'm almost having a battle with myself saying, I want to get out. Okay, I get out. What am I going to do? I'm sitting at home. Then I still have access to this international network, and they're telling me, you've done what you've done in the UK. Let's go and build this in Europe and international. And that's when I met the third syndicate. So we had the Russians in the beginning, the Chinese, and the last dance, if you want to call it, was the Singaporeans. It actually started or stemmed from Australia. So there was a bunch of players that played at the same level that we played. They went over to Australia and they were match fixing. So I believe they had to spend a significant amount of time over there. But I remember, as I knew one of those players, I remember like, ringing him, like, what was happening? And he vaguely told me that, lo and behold, that stemmed from a guy called Terry Steens doing his own investigation to find out the route maps as to other English players potentially that were involved in match fixing. So Wilson Perumal Raj has been convicted for match fixing charges internationally. So through Wilson, he met Chan Sankaran and Krishna Ganashesh. They were paid by the Telegraph at the time to come to the UK. Obviously, they didn't know there was an investigation, but they were given 60,000 by the Telegraph to find players. They happened to have a channel to Delroy Facey. Delroy Facey happened to have a channel to me, and I had a channel to Michael Boateng. Michael Boateng at that time, we had played at Crystal Palace's academy. He was 2 years younger than me. So he was the one person that I spent the most time with because he knew match fixing was happening, but he didn't know it was me. So by the time he found out, I didn't want him to get involved, and I gave him like a loan for his car without me realising I'm actually inducing him. Following on from that, he found out I was fixing, and I was like, okay, I'm not going to do it with you. I'm going to show you how to do it. I'm going to introduce you to Del. Michael was actively playing. He had control and leadership over Whitehawk. he could potentially manipulate and pinpoint what I done at Eastbourne. And all I was going to do then was say, here's A, here's B, this is the pot, that's how much I'm taking, and not actually have an involvement up until Michael lied to me. Why would you go to a meeting and meet the NCA without realizing and not tell me? So when I rang him, I heard the trembling in his voice from that line. Michael, where are you? Why are you asking? Well, I'll never speak to you like that. Well, what's up? Then I knew, because of what I was being told by the syndicate, he was lying. And that game was like 60 grand. If it happened, he would have took obviously the lion's share, but I wanted to teach him a lesson. But then my ego got in the way. So as my ego was getting in the way and I've gone to King's Meadow and I've got tickets and I've met the new syndicate, part of me being there was to teach Michael a lesson. And as I'm trying to teach him a lesson, that's how I got arrested.
No, people, you see, you get into these things until you start get greedy. You start to try reach for lion's share of things. I try to get more and more. When you get lured in, it's like, and start to the likes. You notice no matter how good it is, you know, when you start do them illegal things there, take all the money for sell out your team. The syndicate them know, agents know. So you now get signed to no real important club we want to win trophies. You now get at them club there, you now get forgetting at them club there for go destroy them things. And at the same time, the people we associate with can let you down. Even your own friends, people you think are your friends sometimes, can be part of the honey trap to catch you.